welcome to our webinar today, where we are going to talk about the two-year residential MBA program at Cornell. My name is Nelly, and I'll be the moderator on behalf of UniMy team. And I'm here with two very special guests. First, I want to introduce Eddie Asbie, Executive Director of Admissions and Scholarship at Cornell, who will tell us a bit more about the MBA program itself. I also want to welcome Solomon Tesfaye, who is a Cornell graduate class 2015, and he will tell us about his experience doing an MBA. Before giving the word to our guests, today I want to tell you, you can ask questions anytime during the webinar using the Q&A box, and we'll take time to answer at the end of the session. All questions are welcome, so don't hesitate. So I think everything is set now, and Eddie, I'm giving the word to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nelly. And I appreciate the work that you do, your team, and of course, to our candidates that are on this call. Thanks so much for joining us. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be calling from. As mentioned, my name is Eddie Asbie. I'm the Executive Director of Admissions and Scholarship for our two-year residential MBA program here at Johnson at Cornell University, located in Ithaca, New York. And of course, I'm really excited to talk to you more about the offering here at Johnson, the value of our MBA. But of course, as mentioned, I also have an alum, a good friend that will also be joining today, Solomon, who you will hear from a little bit later. But just to kind of give you more of a structure of the session in particular, I will spend the next 15 minutes or so just doing a brief overview of our program. And then, of course, jumping into more of a dialogue with Solomon about his overall experience here at Johnson, what makes us unique, leadership opportunities and more. So as mentioned, once again, any questions that you have, please use the chat feature, the Q&A feature, so that we can adjust those questions, towards the end of the presentation. So once again, just going to kick it off with just a little bit of an overview. And then once again, we will jump into our discussion about Johnson with Solomon. So as I had mentioned before, once again, my name is Eddie Asbie, Executive Director of Admissions here at Johnson, and I represent the two-year residential MBA program. I've spent my last 10 years here at Johnson, 18 years in higher education. But what I will say is within the work that we do within admissions, it's a lot of fun. We meet some amazing candidates as they are thinking about the next step in their education, but of course, as they're thinking about their next step with an MBA in particular. So I really wanted to just start off by talking a little bit more about why Cornell. So of course, there are amazing schools out there, but when I think about Johnson, when I think about Cornell, there's a lot of different things that come to mind. Of course, the educational aspect of things, knowing that when you are getting a worldwide brand with that worldwide recognition from an Ivy League institution, so that that the leaders, the faculty, the research opportunities that you have here are endless, but also just great opportunities for you to be able to expand throughout your career, but also expand personally. But also with our program here at Johnson, we do give you the flexibility to really be able to tap into other top-ranked programs, here at Cornell. And that's one of the things that I love about our program here at Johnson is, not only do we provide the basic business fundamentals, but we also give you the opportunity of exploring, other top-ranked programs, whether it is the hotel school, engineering, the law school, industrial labor relations, the list goes on. But also you are being taught by some of the best and the brightest. And this is one of the things that I would encourage you as an applicant to do, is to really make sure that you continue to do your research on our faculty, learn more about their backgrounds, what industries they're coming from, courses that they're teaching, and how does that align with what your personal goals look like. And then, of course, our strong alumni presence. If you haven't at this moment, connected with our current students or our alums to learn more about Cornell, to learn more about Johnson, I would highly, highly encourage you to do so. They are very transparent. They're very honest about their experience. But overall, what you will hear is how much they love the community here at Johnson and here at Cornell. So that strong alumni presence is something that you will see, globally. But once again, continue to do that outreach as you go throughout this journey. And then the last thing is really our location. I truly believe that our location is a hidden gem located in the New York State Finger Lakes region, located right in central New York. And it's just an amazing campus, it's an amazing college town. The list goes on, and we can, of course, talk about that a little bit later on. So those are some of the reasons on why I think that you should consider Cornell. So as I had mentioned before, I do represent our two-year MBA program in particular. And I just want to spend just a little bit of time of giving you an overview of what that two-year MBA journey looks like. So of course, within your first year, it is pretty standard and pretty structured like any other business school out there, where you're going through your basic business fundamentals and building your foundation. So ultimately, throughout that time, you're really going through the core courses, whether it's focusing on accounting and stats and operations and finance, but also you are going through a core team experience where there are a group of students in small groups that will, be your core team throughout that full semester. And what we're trying to do is not only give you the basic business fundamentals, but also to, help you build upon that leadership, especially in a group of MBAs that are just starting the program, various different backgrounds, and ultimately kind of getting your feet wet as you begin the start of the program. In the spring semester, there are a couple core courses that you do have to complete, but for the most part, you are spending your time, focusing on the Immersion learning program, which we'll talk about a little bit more in our next slide. Followed by that, the Immersion in the spring semester of your first year, there's that summer internship. And then, of course, in that fall, spring semester of your second year, that's where you really see the flexibility in your program and your curriculum. And, once again, we want you to walk away, with what you need, for understanding basic business fundamentals, having the overall experience that you want. But we also want to make sure that you have global opportunities, expanding on your leadership, the opportunity to take advantage of our New York City Cornell Tech campus. So the list goes on. And once again, I believe our program really gives you the best of both worlds of not only being able to be here at home base here in Ithaca, but also the opportunity of taking advantage of courses at other programs here at Cornell, but also, once again, our Cornell Tech campus. This is just to kind of give you a brief overview of what our class profile looked like this year. Over the last couple of years, we have increased our class. So we're, this year we're a little over 300. Of course, here are just some basic stats regarding our class. Just keep in mind that as we are looking at building our class, we do take a holistic approach in building that class. And the numbers that you see here are either our average or our median. So there may be some who may be below the GPA range or, above the GMAT range, for example. But keep in mind, once again, we're looking at your entire package to make sure that one, you have that solid work experience, that solid foundation, academically can do the work itself. But there's a lot of things that I'm very proud of within this profile, but also things that we can, improve upon, as we get ready to develop the next class. So as I had mentioned before, as far as, the structure of the program, one of the things that we had briefly talked about is our Immersion learning program. And I do believe that this is something that is unique within our program that really gives you the opportunity to really, have that hands-on experience to really be able to take advanced level courses. But the immersion in particular, once again, happens in the spring semester of your first year. It gives you that opportunity, once again, as I mentioned, to have that hands-on experience. One of the things that we talk a lot about, you may see a lot on our website, is about performance learning. And yes, great faculty, yes, they do great, especially in the classroom, teaching you from a lecture, style. But we also understand the importance of actually getting out there, having that field work, working on actual projects, but then also getting feedback from business practitioners that are out there. I know that a lot of MBAs are career switchers in particular. So especially for a career switcher, to be able to tap into the immersion itself, you spend that full semester into that one particular immersion where it's designed to really prepare you for that summer internship. So to kind of give you a sense of some of the immersions that are available, we have a digital technology immersion, we have an investment banking immersion, a semester in strategic operations, and a product and marketing immersion, just to name a few. But once again, this is in that spring semester. If you decide digital technology, you're spending that entire semester focusing on advanced level courses in digital technology, company visits, working on projects for whether it's a local company, whether it's a Fortune 500 company. And once again, it's designed to prepare you for that summer internship itself. We get asked the question also, what about a consulting immersion? Because consulting is, in so many different areas. So whether it is sustainability, whether it is technology, whether it's consulting in the financial sector, typically a student may take advantage of, let's say, an operations immersion or a digital technology immersion, and then focus on the consulting programs that also gives you the opportunity of working on various projects out there as well. So once again, we give you that opportunity to really be able to expand, to be able to grow, to have feedback from business practitioners, so that you can ultimately hit the ground running once you get to that internship, and of course post MBA. So also, as I had mentioned before, our program really does give you the best of both worlds, and this is just kind of a view, of course, of New York City. This is actually Roosevelt Island, which is located in New York City. It's an island in between Queens and Manhattan, where we actually have our own physical tech campus. So if you are someone who is looking to bridge the gap between business and technology, and if you really think about it, not everyone can speak both languages. So especially if you are in the tech industry right now, I'm sure that there are things from the tech side, that make sense. And then of course, there are others on the opposite side of the table from the business side that make sense. But I know that candidates really want to be able to speak both languages, and this program will give you that opportunity to do so. So within our two-year MBA program, there are a few different options that we give you to, one, not only be able to spend some time on the Cornell Tech campus in New York City, but also to be able to expand within your interests within the tech industry. So the first thing that I would like to highlight is really our New York City elective opportunity. And all these opportunities, drastically, there's a drastic range. The New York City elective is just one single weekend in the fall semester where you're taking courses on a Friday and Saturday. Courses that focus in on design thinking, cryptocurrency, cloud computing, the list goes on, but it gives you kind of like a brief glimpse of, what the tech campus entails, but then also, other industries in the tech sector itself. If you're looking for a more extensive experience, there is two intensives. There's the FinTech intensive, but then there's also the digital marketing intensive. Both of these intensives are 7-week intensives, and these happen in the spring semester of your second year. where you are taking some required courses along with some elective courses throughout these 7 weeks. And either these intensives will either immerse you in the fintech space or even the digital marketing space itself. So if that's something that you are interested in and looking for that overall experience, you are living in New York City for those 7 weeks. After those 7 weeks, you have the opportunity of returning back to Ithaca and completing your remaining 7 weeks and taking elective courses here. Or you have the opportunity of completing that entire semester and completing the remaining 7 weeks on the Cornell Tech campus by taking additional elective courses. The new program that I'm happy to highlight is our 1+1 program. And once again, this is designed for those who have a tech focus, who are looking to bridge that gap between business to digital economy, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset. But this 1+1 program allows you to, one, spend your first year in Ithaca. So as I had mentioned before, your first semester is your core courses, your core team experience. It's then the immersion. You then go through your summer internship. And then in your second year, you actually spend the entire second year, fall and spring semester in New York City, going through their startup curriculum, with the Cornell Tech students in particular. So this is something very new. We are just piloting this program this year. We have approximately 15 students that are currently at Cornell Tech, and they've been there for about a month right now. But we will continue to move forward with this offering, within our program itself. So once again, if this is something that is of interest to you, this aligns with your goals, something I would say take into consideration. So just a couple more slides for you. And of course, we will jump into our conversation with Solomon as well. But there's a huge emphasis on leadership, here at Johnson. We want to make sure not only that you get a great job, that you do well academically, but also we want to make sure that you are walking away with true leadership skills, or even just growing, throughout your time. We know that, our MBAs, they want to be the best at what they're doing. They truly value our brand. They want to be leaders, within their organizations, or eventually maybe even entrepreneurs. And you really can't do that without being a great leader. So throughout your time here at Johnson, there's so much that we focus on. We focus on our 4 C's framework, which focuses on competence, character, compassion, and courage. And these are, 4 C's that we utilize, whether it is in the classroom, your core team experience, whether it is workshops, or even just, focusing on, conflict that may happen. But a lot of this is, starts right from the beginning, starting with our Johnson outdoor experience, where it's an opportunity, as you can see from some of these photos, where we go to, it's more of a retreat or a camp ground area with a beautiful outdoor space for our students to work with their core team and to, work on fun leadership activities throughout their time. But also, as I had mentioned before, I've mentioned a couple of times about that core team experience. There is an algorithm that our community uses where we put our students into core teams of about 4 or 5 students. And your core team is made up of a team from various different backgrounds. So you may have an investment banker, you may have a consultant, you may have a lawyer, you may have an engineer in that group. And of course, as you think, to have a banker and a lawyer and an engineer together, everyone's thought process is completely different. The way you solve problems may be completely different, but ultimately it's working together to come up with the best solution. And this is that group that you work with throughout that full semester. There's leadership expeditions that give you opportunities to travel, whether it's domestically, internationally, focusing on leadership. There's our leadership skills program that gives you opportunities of, going through various challenges in leadership settings. And opportunities to sit on the board of a local nonprofit here in Ithaca through our Johnson Board Fellows. And once again, just the list goes on as far as these different opportunities. But once again, we want you to walk away truly feeling like, that leadership component is something that you've truly walked away with, and really truly grown on. The last thing that I do want to mention is really the Roy H. Park Fellowship. So I will say, and just start off that to even qualify for this fellowship in particular, it is for domestic candidates in particular. We do identify approximately 24, 25 students each year that not only receive a 2-year full tuition fellowship, but also it has that leadership component behind it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions, though, about the Park Fellowship is if I am not a Park Fellow, am I able to experience some of the leadership opportunities? Absolutely. Those leadership opportunities are for all students. But this program does have a unique experience for those 24, 25 as they go through a cohort together throughout their 2 years. All right, just a couple more slides for you. Of course, from the career development side. So these numbers right here are from the graduating class of 2021. I know that our Career Management Center mentioned that the information for the graduating class of 2022 should be up on our website any moment now. But this is just kind of a sense of of how well our students have done, from the recruiting side. Down at the bottom, of course, is our website to our career site, our employment data. It gives you the employment data, not only gives you information about full-time offers, but also where our students are going for internship opportunities, industries, top companies that our students are recruiting with and for. But once again, what I will say is our students do very well in the recruiting side of things. There's a dedicated professional, staff within the CMC here at Johnson that's here to guide you along the way. So whether it's before the MBA program starts, throughout your journey, and even as an alum, if there is guidance that you need, they're here to guide you along the way. But I would encourage you to really look at our career website along with their employment data to learn a little bit more. And then, of course, Ithaca. If you haven't had the opportunity to come and visit, please do. We are getting ready to launch in-person opportunities for the remainder of the fall semester and, of course, for the spring semester. But we are located in Central New York, right in, about 4 hours north of New York City, about an hour south of Syracuse, New York. But what you will get within Ithaca is an amazing college town. As I mentioned earlier, we are located in the Finger Lakes region. So, when it comes to wine and food, this is a great location to be. If you were thinking of bringing families, your significant others, a great place to really have a family or even just a great sense of community here. But once again, as you go throughout this journey, I think it's easy for me to say, I've loved my 10 years here at Johnson, but connect with our students, connect with our alums, ask them the tough questions on their experience, the pros and the cons of being in Ithaca versus a larger metropolitan city. But what I will say is, when it comes to Cornell, when it comes to our location, it's a hidden gem. You can't beat it. And then, of course, the last slide on my end before we get into more of a discussion is just more about our application deadlines. So I'm sure some of you may have already gone ahead and submitted an application by our September deadline. If you did, congratulations to you on submitting that. I know that the journey of applying and essays and tests and all that fun stuff is definitely a lot of work. But know that there are two ways of applying to business school. Of course, there's our standard Johnson application, and then there is an organization called the Consortium that supports our underrepresented population towards business education. If you are applying via the Consortium, just know that the only requirements for that is that you have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. If not, of course, there are 3 rounds through our Johnson application, which are our September, our January, and our April round. Know that, we try to also be very transparent when it comes to our deadline, that, after you've submitted your application by that deadline, there's an initial notification deadline. There's also a final decision deadline, where that initial notification deadline just indicates that by November 4th, if you've applied in that first round, by November 4th, you will have heard if you've been invited for an interview, if you've been placed on the wait list without an interview, or if you've been denied after the initial review. Of course, if you are invited for an interview, we do guarantee you by December 8th that you will receive your final decision as far as if you have been admitted, if you've been placed on the wait list after your interview, or you have been denied. So just keep in mind, all this information can be found on our website, but that's just a little bit more about our application deadlines itself. So that is a brief overview regarding Johnson, our program, what I feel are our strengths in the program. But of course, I am also excited to have a further discussion with one of our alums, Solomon, who is once again an alum from the class of 2015. Once again, great friend as well. So Solomon, thanks so much for joining today, and of course sharing your experience.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Eddie, for having me. Thanks, Nelly, for coordinating this, and thank you all for joining.
All right, great. So Solomon, we're going to actually jump in it, and of course to our candidates, prospective candidates here. Once again, towards the end, we are here to answer all your questions. So feel free to use that Q&A, that chat. I do see a couple questions that may have come through. But Solomon, let's actually get started. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And great. So Solomon, yeah, let's get started, and let's just talk a little bit more about your overall experience. So if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, giving us an overview of just, who you are, what did you do before business school, and then of course, what are you doing currently?
Absolutely. So as Eddie stated, Solomon Tesfaye, I'm proud of class of 2015, just to go in chronological order before business school. So I actually studied biological sciences in undergrad. I got exposed to entrepreneurship early on during my undergrad, co-founded a web-based business, had some modest success in that. And then post-undergrad, I looked to combine basically pre-med education, the bio education with business. So I went into the medical device space, more in an operational role. Had a great time. I ended up moving up leadership roles, ended up being, the quality technical supervisor, had a team of 17, but I was really missing that business development exposure that I gained in entrepreneurship. So I transitioned to a venture capital firm in Northern California, primarily focused on seed stage investing, so in tech, healthcare. That was great experience, kind of understanding from an investor perspective how they identify early stage startups, high performing entrepreneurs, and so forth. But it also allowed me to identify gaps in my education. Keep in mind, I studied biology undergrad, so I did not have a formal finance experience, accounting experience, general strategy exposure. And so with that, I basically started to apply to business school in parallel to working at that venture capital firm. I was fortunate enough to get into a number of programs. I'm very pleased that I ended up going with the Johnson. I did the investment banking immersion at Johnson because I was literally looking for a very technical foundation as I kind of launched my second career to third career at that point. And then ended up going to Citigroup, focused on investment banking within the industrial space, industrial technologies to be more specific. Was there for a number of years. And then now I'm currently head of capital markets at a firm called T0, where I lead investment banking, broader capital markets, as well as business development. So pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. And of course, you've had, of course, a great career so far. And of course, I know that you have great things, moving forward. But I do want to maybe dig a little bit deeper on why the MBA. So I know that, nowadays there are, great MBA programs out there. There are specialized masters out there. But if you could maybe elaborate just a little bit further on why you decided the MBA made sense for you, but also why did you choose Johnson?
Absolutely. So MBA is kind of a rare opportunity to basically recalibrate your career, especially if you're looking to make a significant shift. I know Eddie touched upon many folks that pursue MBAs are career switchers. I was a career switcher. It would have been very difficult to go from more of an operational medical device background, entrepreneur background, into investment banking in absence of an MBA, or it would have been a more elongated process if I tried to go that route, because where else can you basically go into an incubator that's going to give you those fundamental skill sets, both from a technical perspective, but also from a self-development perspective, and then also be surrounded by a very supportive set of peers that are going to kind of support you. And then, of course, be colleagues post the MBA experience. I went with MBA because, one, I wanted to get kind of business breadth exposure. I was not looking to double down specifically only on finance. I wanted to have a lot of optionality after I graduate. So I wanted to get finance exposure. I mentioned accounting exposure, strategy, operations, marketing. I basically want to have as many basically tools in my toolkit as possible, so I could really take my career in whatever direction I so chose and basically be able to have the highest degree of flexibility. And then when I looked at Johnson relative to any other institution, I went to a large undergrad, a UC program. I was looking to have a contrast in terms of my experience in MBA. I wanted to really take a very thoughtful approach and basically having a tight-knit community of individuals that ideally were not distracted by being in a city and have competing priorities. I really felt that not only due to Johnson's location, but just having it visited multiple times on campus, met a lot of alumni, met a lot of current students, met a lot of the faculty. I realized that really there's 100% focus on really development of the student body. And I really felt that I needed that at that stage. I wanted to really take a very thoughtful approach toward the next phase of my career if I was going to put my career on pause. And so really Johnson had the proven track record from a reputation perspective, of course, had successful alumni like so many other institutions, but also the tight-knit community and the Ithaca community, more broadly speaking. I was very pleasantly surprised by just how dynamic the whole environment around Cornell really is. And the fact that Johnson, if you have fortunate enough to visit, I really encourage you to visit, you'll realize that Johnson's really at the epicenter of the campus. So it becomes somewhat of a melting pot between a lot of the different programs, because they either pass through the program, they either take a couple of business classes, they either stop by for a coffee just based on the location. So it really becomes this kind of dynamic epicenter of campus that I was very attracted to. A lot of campuses, they happen to have the business school off to the side or further away from campus. And I just felt that I was really looking to collaborate, not only with the Johnson students, but with programs across the university, given the strength of the school more broadly speaking.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So I think, when candidates think about an MBA and they think about business school, I think one of the things that I hear all the time is that, everyone who has an MBA comes from a business background, and or you have to have a finance background, or once again, just come from the financial industry itself. And I know that, of course, especially developing the class and looking at the makeup of the class, that's, of course, not true. But can you maybe expand a little bit more on what your class looked like, whether it was, those coming from different industries, the diversity, the class size, anything that you feel would be helpful to kind of share about, what you saw in your class in particular?
Of course, from an industry vertical perspective, it was extremely diverse. I would definitely not say that one line of work before business school was any dominant line of work. We had engineers, we had physicians, we had people that were in consulting before, finance before, but we also had others that were veterans for their whole career prior to coming into business school. We had entrepreneurs, we have folks that were in healthcare. So it was truly, truly diverse. And keep in mind, a lot of people were looking to make that career shift. So they weren't in business before, and then they intended on getting into more pure play business afterward. And from a just pure diversity perspective, I was quite surprised just the number of countries that were represented. I believe there was almost 40 countries represented in my class alone. And then, of course, diversity from a domestic perspective as well. And then, as I mentioned, veterans, LGBT, the women population, I believe, was closer to 40%, which was high from a business school perspective. And I know those numbers have only been growing. So I was very pleased from a industry vertical perspective, which of course creates a nice dynamic environment in the classroom in terms of different perspectives, was very, very diverse. And just from a basically affiliation perspective and diversity perspective, it was a very diverse class. And I know that's been consistent from having looked at the numbers over the last 7 years.
Right. Yes, we definitely work very hard to bring in, a very diverse group. The way I look at it is businesses in every industry out there. So, when I look at the variety of industries and backgrounds, students coming from, once again, over 40 different countries in particular. It's something that we're proud of here at Johnson, but also, when it comes to, connecting with current students and alums too, they will also probably reiterate the same thing about, what the makeup of their class look like. So to anyone on this call, especially if you are, thinking of, does an MBA make sense, especially based off of your background, don't count yourself out. I'm sure that there's someone that I can connect you with in particular that has a similar background, but once again, we're really proud of just kind of the the diversity that we have in the class itself. So,
and just to emphasize that point even further, I had individuals in my class that went from Teach for America into investment banking. I had individuals in my class that went from private equity into nonprofits. So MBA truly is a very unique opportunity to basically shift your career 90 degrees, which would be very difficult to do outside of an MBA experience. But I just want to underline the point that what you were doing before really has no impact on what you're doing after. Of course, you could draw upon, of course, a lot of learnings in your earlier career, but it won't dictate or limit what you could pursue after an MBA.
Great, thank you. So let's maybe focus a little bit more on leadership. I know that I talked about leadership here at Johnson, and I know that you were active during your time, in the program. But maybe talk a little bit more about, some of the ways that you, stayed active, in leadership opportunities, but then also some of the fun things that you did within the program, or even just here in Ithaca.
Absolutely. So there's a number of different organizations I was fortunate enough to be part of. Consortium, which is basically a fellowship that's basically granted to individuals that have done or demonstrated service focus on underrepresented minorities, as well as Park Fellow, as Eddie touched upon and elaborated earlier regarding that leadership program. And definitely want to emphasize that a lot of the leadership, access to leadership development is offered broadly speaking. But then also I was surprised at the level and the amount of clubs that are offered on campus, whether it's the beer clubs, the wine clubs, the professional clubs for consulting, investment banking, whether it's the diversity focused clubs, you name it, Johnson has it in terms of if you want to take a deep dive regarding any of those different topics. And then what really caught me off guard, and I know Eddie's well aware of this, is I didn't realize the amount of opportunities you have to travel. Given the fact that I pursued MBA at a little bit younger age, given the fact that I had some entrepreneur experience, I had traveled quite a bit domestically, but not as much internationally. And so I really took advantage of the international travel through the treks that were basically professor and student-led treks. They had the Israel trek, the Europe trek. They had a number of treks throughout Asia. And also I had the opportunity to study abroad. I missed out on that opportunity in undergrad to study abroad because I was involved in athletics. And so I definitely took advantage of that. Cornell has relationships with strong institutions globally. I happened to go to Barcelona, ESADE, for my study abroad program. So in short, I was able to travel to over 25 countries while I was in business school, which is something I definitely did not anticipate. But I really enjoyed it because not only did I get the technical skill set I was looking for, not only did I get this basically strong network of community, both from a classmate perspective as well as faculty perspective. But I also got basically world perspective, which I was not expecting to get to that degree while attending this strong of an institution. So I just, in terms of a whole 360-degree self-development, professional development, I was very pleased with that experience.
Great. I remember all those trips that you took, and definitely jealous during that time. But of course, once again, with our program in particular, you have that opportunity to really customize your program the way you see best fit. But once again, not only being able to, take the courses here at Johnson, here at Cornell Tech, global opportunities, leadership opportunities. Once again, I feel like it's an endless opportunities that are here. And once again, something that we're very proud of. A couple more questions, and of course, we will get to the questions and the Q&A. So once again, if there are questions that you still have, continue to send those in throughout the Q&A feature, and we will get to them in a couple of minutes. But as an alum, it's important that we keep you involved. And of course, you're demonstrating today just kind of your commitment to Johnson. But can you maybe talk about other ways, especially after you graduated, where you've stayed connected to the Johnson or the Cornell community?
Absolutely. So throughout my whole experience at Johnson, even before attending Johnson, just evaluating which institution I was looking to pursue, I was always pleasantly surprised by just the engagement of the Johnson community, both in the, on a global basis, really, domestically and abroad. I was very surprised at how accessible a lot of alumni and current students made themselves. And I just basically took that on. Post-graduating, I realized that I needed to pay it forward as well, given the fact that I was fortunate enough to take advantage of that community even before I even attended the school. So I of course, get involved in a number of different ways, that, of course, this being one of them, but also not only talking to prospective students, but also working with students that are about to graduate regarding where they want to take their career. And then, of course, from a recruiting perspective as well, while I was at Citigroup and while I'm at this organization, of course, I'm quite biased in terms of making sure that I take care of my fellow Johnson students. And you'll find that even no matter how senior the alumni are, they just, given the size of the community, it's not overwhelming for them to stay engaged. And that's a big contrast from some of maybe the larger institutions where maybe the alumni can be overwhelmed by the amount of basically inbounds they get regarding introductions and career advice and so forth. Here it's manageable. So the responsiveness is really key. So not only do I get involved just from a professional development perspective, and also I give back to the school as well. And the reason why I feel compelled to do that is because I know the impact it's had on my career, and just how fondly I look back at that experience. So there's a number of different ways you can contribute. It doesn't have to be financially, but I think at a bare minimum, professionally, you'll find that a lot of the alumni will be engaged. And the good thing about the alumni when they visit campus is, just given the location of the campus, they tend to stay overnight. So you could actually build a very genuine relationship with them because they're not in a rush to leave. I know that whenever I visit campus, I'm always enthusiastic because I know I'll be able to have meaningful relationships or develop meaningful conversations with the different students on campus, because I know I'm staying there overnight. I know you're able to just have a very organic conversation, as opposed to them being on campus for 2 hours and then having to catch a flight or transportation out.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask one last question for right now. Once again, we will jump into Q&A next. But as far as advice, once again, you've been on, you were through the phase of thinking of business school, applying to business school, of course, being in the program, and of course, now as an alum. But any piece of advice that you have for candidates as they think about Johnson or the application process, or just an overall MBA, but any advice that you would give, to candidates as they start to move forward in this process?
Absolutely. So I know I mentioned it in the blog, but really view the MBA decision is not a transactional decision. It's a multivariable decision where you have to basically outline what you're looking to gain from the experience, whether it's a technical program, whether it's international experience, whether it's a smaller community. whether it's evaluating if the recruiter that you want to basically be employed with and recruit from that particular institution, and just the community feel, which you can gain insight into based on as many interactions you can have with the student body, alumni, and faculty. I think really just taking a step back and taking a very thoughtful approach regarding how you are evaluating what lens you're using to choose the institution you want to pursue is very important, because you want to make sure it's a conducive environment for you basically to experience that professional and personal development within that school, so you can actually launch off your career from there, and also view it as a brand that you will be affiliated with the rest of your life. So you really want to make sure that you take a very thoughtful approach in terms of what brand do you want to be part of and what community do you want to be part of. And also, if you're going to an MBA program, you want to make sure that there's an accessibility of not only resources, but alumni and faculty and so forth. And that's really what led me to, Johnson in the first place, is you have access to all these subject matter experts within Ithaca. Your peers at the school basically are 100% focused on developing relationships with you, because as I mentioned earlier, there's no competing priorities of being in the city. So you tend to develop very genuine relationships with the whole community, both peers as well as faculty, as well as the broader Ithaca community. And that's really what I was looking for. I was really looking to go into more of an incubation environment, so then I could start the next phase of my career as ideally Solomon Testified 2.0.
Awesome. Solomon, of course, as always, I appreciate you. And thanks for, of course, sharing your words of wisdom to candidates about the program, of course, your overall experience. And then once again, the value of a Cornell MBA. So we're going to spend the next few minutes or so just answering some questions that came through in the Q&A side of things. So once again, continue to send those questions in. We are excited to answer those questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Eddie, Solomon, for these insights into the MBA program. Indeed, we have a few questions. I will give you, Solomon, a few minutes to rest, and I'll start with a few questions directed to Eddie regarding the admission process. Okay, we have a person here from Morocco who is wondering if she or he is qualified to apply for an MBA program. So if you can just quickly tell us again the main requirements, age, professional experience, does the country matter?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when it comes to the MBA itself, and hopefully you saw, what our class profile looks like. And, once again, that's a true range, whether it is our students on average have about 5 years of work experience or so. I think the main requirement to even qualify for an MBA in particular is that you have graduated from an undergraduate institution, an accredited undergraduate institution. My recommendation as far as the overall experience in particular is to get some experience. And once again, when you look at the average student here, about 5 years of experience, there are some who are over 5 years of experience. They have 10 years of experience. They may have some with, 3 years, 2-3 years of experience. But the question is really, why is this the right time for you to get an MBA? When I think about our admissions process, there are many different things that we're looking at. So, of course, we're looking at your academic credentials, whether it's from the undergraduate side, whether it is from the graduate side, whether there's different certifications that you have. We look at your work experience, and we look at throughout your experience, how you've progressed throughout your career, how you've made an impact. We want to see that growth throughout that professional journey. We look at essays, your short-term and your long-term goals. How's the MBA going to add value? How is Johnson the school to ultimately help you in that process? So it's really being able to answer those questions and to really give it some sincere thought behind, the rationale of getting an MBA. We look at letters of recommendations and what your recommenders are saying and how you've added value to, your experience with, that company or that organization. And then, of course, the last part of it really is an interview. And it's invite only, where we do, want to sit down with you for a half an hour, whether it's in person, whether it's through Zoom, where we truly connect with you about, what you indicated in your application. How is the MBA going to add value, to you both personally and professionally? And of course, just being able to get a better sense of overall fit, within our community. So, once again, thinking of an MBA and do you really qualify? Once again, think about where you are in your career. Does it make sense? How will the MBA add value? Why our program in particular? But of course, if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself or a member of our team.
Thank you, Eddie. Let's stay a little bit more on this topic. There is a question. I have a bachelor's degree in law. Can I study MBA?
Absolutely. And I think this kind of goes back to even what I had mentioned about the different offerings or the flexibility of taking courses, at other areas here at Cornell. There are MBAs who take law classes. There are dual degree JD MBA students that we have in our program as well. And I think too that it may be helpful to really be able to connect with professionals, especially maybe a JD MBA in particular, but once again, you want to be able to sit at the table, within a firm or within an industry and really understand both sides. I think from, the legal side, there are basic things that you are, you're making decisions from a legal side, but then once again, there's that business component to it. And you want to be that person who knows how to talk to both sides and to really be able to work with clients on both ends as well. So absolutely, if you have a law degree or just even in the legal field, yes, an MBA can be very valuable, especially depending on what you're looking to do with it.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And there is a question about the admissions requirements. Do you take GRE or any GMAT waiver, or it has to be a GMAT?
Yeah, great question. So we do, students can either submit a GMAT or a GRE, and it does not matter which test that you take. But we do also allow students to put in for a test waiver request. So just to kind of give you a sense of what that test waiver request is, one, if you are someone who has clear evidence of your quantitative ability, so maybe academically you've done very well, maybe it's your work experience itself, and once again, you're able to truly show the quantitative component of things, you may be someone, that may want to request the waiver itself. Know that with our process in particular, it is a question in the application, and you will not find out a response as far as if you've been granted the waiver or not until after you've submitted your application. One of the reasons behind that is, one, the waiver is not for everyone. And we want you to give it sincere thought as far as your background, your credentials, and if the waiver makes sense. I will say that overall candidates do very well who are asking for the waiver, but once again, the waiver is not for everyone. If you're not coming from a quantitative background, or maybe you struggle in those quantitative courses, maybe your experience from a work standpoint, doesn't, show that ability, I would recommend taking the test, especially looking at the competitiveness of what our applicant pool looks like. But also, we want to make sure that once you hit the ground, that you hit the ground running, especially going through those core courses, or if you're looking to make a career switch, especially in specific industries.
Thank you, Eddie. And does the test waiver impact the application?
No, once again, I think that this is, when we talk about a holistic approach in your application, that's something that we really, value. I don't think that a test is something that is also a true indication of everyone's, potential. Some people are just not great test takers, but they have amazing experience. They're a great fit for our program in particular. And, if that's something that we see, we're still going to admit you. We're still going to look at you for scholarships, even scholarships all the way up to full tuition. But once again, if you are granted that waiver itself, hopefully there's other components in your application that are strong, including that interview as well.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I'm happy to say that more questions are coming in the Q&A box. I will direct one to Solomon now. Okay, Solomon, what was your favorite class and what was the most difficult one?
So favorite class was probably entrepreneurship. I just liked, at that point, I had already had all the core classes, finance, accounting, marketing, strategy, statistics. And really, I felt that from an entrepreneur perspective, it kind of combined all of those into one class. Also, I think there was a lot of outside work that was not class related that I really enjoyed, like eLab. I was involved in the incubator on campus where I was one of the fellows that helped mentor some of the students, student-run businesses, whether it be undergrad or grad. So that was another program that I really enjoyed, that was not a formal class per se. And then from a difficulty perspective, I'd say just given my background was primarily in science and operations, I would say that intermediate accounting, so advanced accounting, was definitely a step up from what I was familiar with, as well as the later stages of advanced like valuation work and so forth. That now, of course, given my line of work, I'm very comfortable with. But of course, there was a learning curve at that moment. So I think that would be the big contrast from the other classes, in my personal opinion. But of course, just depends on your background.
Thank you very much. We have a few questions regarding how people can connect with former or current students. There is a person saying that he can search them on LinkedIn, but are there any official page on your website where current students can be reached?
Yes, actually, yes. On our website, there is actually a Connect with Our Students page. If you actually go to the johnson.cornell.edu page, under our two-year MBA program and under our admissions tab, there is a Connect with Students link in particular. So, and in there, you actually will see photos, headshots of our students. There's their bio, more from what countries they may be representing. We do ask our student ambassadors as well as other students to, create a profile. And of course, not everyone, has created a profile, but there is a good group of students between first years and second years that are willing to connect with prospective candidates to share their story a little bit more. So that's my recommendation as far as connecting with the current student. If there's an alum that you're interested in connecting with, I would say reach out to, feel free to reach out to me directly so that I can make sure that I connect you with the right alum. But I would say to, start with our students so that they can, answer, questions that you may have, regarding that. But yes, there is a link on our website.
Thank you very much. This is very useful. Solomon, I have a very interesting question for you. I'm sorry. So many questions are coming in.
That's great.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you managed to establish yourself as a leader earlier in your career and become the head of a group a few years after completing your MBA?
Absolutely. So, oftentimes when someone goes to an MBA program, they think that sometimes the first job out will be their dream job, which could be the case if you have very relevant experience, before business school. But sometimes there's some technical knowledge you need to gain before you can make that ultimate step. In my case, I was looking to get into more finance entrepreneurial type of role. I had no traditional finance experience. I had venture capital experience, but that was early stage venture capital. So it was not quantitative. It was more so scaling a business operational focus. And so I knew I needed to get investment banking experience to get to my ultimate destination. And then Johnson gave me the core skill sets, the technical foundation, but then I needed to have on-the-job experience in an investment banking setting. And so by doing that at Citigroup, it allowed me to establish that foundation, get to a certain level of seniority in that environment. And then I basically identified a more mid-sized company that I felt that I could add value to in terms of scaling the business. And I knew I could enter at an appropriate level of seniority where it would put me at least within reach of becoming a senior executive. And then by joining this organization as it grew and as I contributed to its growth, it positioned me very well to basically move up the ranks as the business expanded and take on more responsibilities. So you are able to join large organizations, whether it's in investment banking, whether it's in consulting, whether it's in Google, and you do see individuals transition to maybe smaller or mid-sized companies and help with their growth, but they join at a much more senior rank given their experience. So that's one way to basically expedite your career per se, if you are willing to make that transition at an earlier stage in your career.
Thank you very much for this answer. Eddie, we're receiving 2 questions regarding the impact essay. Can you give any tips there? What is expected?
Yeah, the impact essay. Oh, so the impact essay, really just, we're looking to get a good sense of, one, how much you really know about Johnson, how you see yourself making an impact in our community. When I think about Ithaca, when I think about Johnson, we are a smaller community compared to our peers. So some may say we are a small to medium size MBA program, but once again, thinking about thinking about our community in particular, our students are like a family. They have each other to lean on. They're supportive of each other. They spend a lot of time, whether it's in the same, apartment complexes or just here at Sage Hall, they see each other quite often. And I think that the type of person that applies to Johnson is very intentional. They know that they're looking for, once again, a global brand, a smaller program, and it's different than a school, once again, in a larger metropolitan area. So with the impact essay, we want to know that you've done your due diligence on our program, and once again, are able to identify ways of making an impact in our community. So whether it is you're interested in marketing and, maybe it's working with the marketing, club, or, expanding Battle of the Brands, or, maybe it is, you're very passionate about, getting over 40% of women in the program, and it's working with the Women's Management Council to help expand on current or new initiatives. Those are some of the things that I would say we're looking for. But once again, the impact essay just really should demonstrate, one, your commitment, your knowledge of the program itself, but ultimately, how do you see yourself making an impact in a community like ours?
Thank you very much, Eddie. Just for your information, for everyone who is listening, I just pasted in the chat the link that you can use to connect with current students. So use it. Eddie, we have received a few questions about scholarships, and specifically scholarships for international students. Do you offer any?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question once again?
What kind of scholarships, especially for international students? Do you have any scholarships dedicated to international?
Yes. Yep. So with our scholarships in particular, know that there is, there's no application process in particular. And our international students are being looked at for all of our scholarships, except for, as I had mentioned, the Park Fellowship, as well as the Consortium Fellowship, because once again, these 2 fellowships in particular, you do have to be either a domestic candidate or a permanent resident will also qualify you for the consortium. Other than that, whether it's just a general merit scholarship, whether it is a Forte scholarship, whether it is our Ramba scholarship, which supports our LGBTQ+ community, we're considering international candidates for the same scholarships that our domestic candidates are receiving. And scholarships range. They range, let's say, from about $10,000 per year all the way up to full tuition. And keep in mind, it is based off of the quality of your overall application, as well as the competitiveness of the entire applicant pool.
Thank you very much, Eddie. We're going a little bit over 1 hour, but if you still have time, both of you, I will continue asking questions. Is that okay?
Yep. So I know that I can keep going. Solomon, I'm sure you have a stop soon.
I have 5 minutes on my side, but happy to take a couple more questions.
Okay, I have one question here. Can I come with my spouse? I'm not sure if this is about admission or MBA experience in general. Maybe Solomon, you tell us before you go. How was your what was your time management? Were you too busy? Did you have time for social activities? Did you have time for family, friends, or you were just in classes all the time?
Absolutely, you have time for all of the above, but keep in mind, your first semester when you're actually immersing yourself in academics and getting the core classes out of the way, and you have your group projects and you have recruiting for different organizations and so forth, and you're just kind of getting acclimated to the environment. You are very, very busy that first semester, right? And then, of course, as you start to gain some momentum and some of those ancillary things basically get taken off your plate. For example, you've secured your internship, for example, going into second semester. You basically have more and more freedom and more flexibility in your schedule to take classes that are off the beaten path, and of course immerse yourself in Ithaca and do any type of traveling you wish to do. That's like treks and so forth. As you can tell, I did quite a bit of those during my time there. So you definitely have a higher degree of flexibility as you go further in the MBA program. But like all these top institutions, the first semester is quite busy. But then of course it gets much lighter. And then post your summer experience, assuming you secure your summer internship, if that's the route you so choose and you don't want to re-recruit, you have a lot of flexibility a second year rather, in terms of really kind of customizing your MBA experience that second year to a very, very meaningful degree. So in short, you definitely have a high degree of flexibility in terms of kind of curating your whole experience during the Johnson experience.
Thank you very much. This is very encouraging. Okay, the questions I have left are here for admissions. So if you have to go, just go. We really thank you for sharing your experience with us today.
It's been my pleasure. And then don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions. Eddie knows how to get in contact with me. Thank you, Nelly, for coordinating this, and excited for all of you to go through the process. You won't regret it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Solomon.
Okay, Eddie, I will get back to the GMAT waiver because I guess this is something that is really interesting for the people. Yeah. They're asking, what are the chances that you'll be interviewed if you receive the GMAT waiver?
Yeah, once again, it's based off the quality of your application. Once again, I think the biggest misconception is if I'm granted a waiver, one, I might not get an interview or I might not get a scholarship. And once again, I think that this is where you may want to continue to reach out to current students and hear more about their experience, find out if they were granted the waiver, and find out, what their process looks like. But, once again, if you are overall, if you are a strong candidate, even without the test itself, we don't want to lose you, and we know that for many candidates, the financial side of things are very important. So that's what we have to take into consideration. But once again, we are looking at the overall strength of that, your profile. What I will say though is, if you do have a test, and especially if it is a good test, even if it's at our average, if it's definitely higher, and you're still contemplating, do I, just go with the waiver or do I submit a test? I'm going to encourage you in that case to submit a test. It doesn't hurt. If you're looking at two candidates that are the exact same profile, same experience, they both interview well, one submits a great test score, one doesn't submit a test. that's just one additional data point that from the admission side that, we have and may help, especially if it's a great year, in our applicant pool. So, once again, this is where you need to use your best judgment on if the waiver makes sense, or once again, is it something that may be helpful? But once again, it is a holistic approach that we take.
Thank you very much. Does MBA admission chances get reduced when we apply in round 2 when compared to applying in round 1?
Great question. So, every year is so different and it's really hard to answer that question. In round 1, some years our round 1s are very strong. And we may go out, once again, as I mentioned before, if you're a great candidate, whether you applied round 1, round 2, if we, really want you, we're going to put that offer out there and do whatever it takes to get you here into the program. But some round 1s I've seen where, the applicant volume is very strong. There's some years where I've seen the applicant volume where it's, not as strong. There are some times where there are candidates who apply round 1 and we may put them on the wait list because we want to see what round 2 looks like, or being that, once again, just their overall profile, there's just more information that we want. I will say that round 2 is definitely our largest round. And we do go out with, a good amount of offers. So I don't think that it really matters whether you apply round 1, round 2. I will say that if you apply round 3, that's where the difference really matters. I think that when you apply in the April round, there may be, there will be fewer spots available, but then also from the funding side of things, as far as the scholarship, there could be little to no funding by that last round. But once again, typically by around 1, round 2, there should be still enough funding as well as spots available. Thank you for clarifying this.
And yet again, another question about the GMAT waiver. There is this person wondering if they will submit their GMAT score after being granted the waiver, does that benefit or hurt their application?
So if they submit a score, so if they're granted a waiver and then later on submit a test, is that correct?
This is how I understand the question.
Okay. Yeah. So we see that happen, all the time. And, once again, it really depends on, one, what test score you're submitting. And typically someone who's submitting a test score after they've been granted a waiver, typically usually has a pretty good score. And they feel that it's something that will ultimately help their profile. So this is where you have to use your best judgment on, does that even make sense? For some candidates, absolutely, it does. For some, it may not. But once again, it's hard to truly answer that question without knowing, one, even just the full competitiveness of what the applicant pool looks like. So even with us looking, having a round, our September round a couple of weeks ago, we're still getting through the processing of those applications. And it's going to take us some time to even just get through the review process of it. But once again, we do allow you to submit a test, even if you've been granted a waiver. But once again, use your best judgment for that.
Thank you, Eddie. And maybe super quickly, what was your requirement for the English language proficiency?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do allow candidates to submit a TOEFL or IELTS. If you are submitting a TOEFL, we do look for a minimum of 100 overall, with a 25 in each subsection. If you are submitting for the IELTS, we do look for a 7 overall, as well as a 7 in each subsection as well. So something to kind of take into consideration.
Thank you very much. And again, one question about the background of the prospective candidates, and maybe if you have any statistics, maybe how many people from human resources apply? Is this a background that could be considered relevant for an MBA degree?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have current stats on that because once again, every year the applicant pool is completely different. I will say definitely we do have those, with an HR background in our program. We have some who, once again, are just coming from an HR background. We have some who are actually doing a dual degree with our MILR, our Master's in Industrial Labor Relations, and the MBA program. That dual degree is a 2.5-year program. So once again, we see it. I will say, I think that probably from a number standpoint, it's probably still on the smaller side, but once again, keep in mind, business is in every industry, definitely the HR side is what we see. I always say that if I actually had to go back and get an MBA, I actually think I would go the HR route with the MBA itself. But yes, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much, Eddie. We covered all the questions. Really, very active audience today. I hope we were able to help. Thank you for sharing all this useful information. So any last words before closing this webinar?
Well, one, I appreciate once again just the session and all the great questions. And I would encourage you to keep asking those questions, keep asking the tough questions. When I think about business school, it's 2 years of your life that you're stepping away from, your employment, but also financially, it's a lot of money, but it's a great, great investment. So just know that we're here, connect with our students, attend some of our events, whether it's virtual. If you have the opportunity to visit in person, we would love to welcome you to campus itself, but ultimately have fun and just let us know how we can answer your questions further.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Thank you everyone for joining. We wish you best of luck in your academic journey. Bye, everyone.